cocktail of broccoli, sodium bicarbonate, and Monster energy drink.
That sounds frothy.
Is it bad that I was doing okay with that? Welcome back to the Spin Cycle Podcast, everybody. I am Kaylee Fretz. Today on the show, the best 15 minutes in bike racing is now the best 30 minutes. Mess Pedersen had a yucky drink. David Lamartienne is down to 9 jobs. Congratulations, David. Let's get to it. Welcome to Spin Cycle. Kit Nicholson.
Hello.
It was a chaotic weekend for you.
Very long weekend. Yeah, It was chaotic is the word, yeah.
And welcome, Johnny Long.
Hello, welcome.
Well, you both know what we're going to be talking about here. We had my favorite bicycle race happened over the weekend, and we got 2 of them, which is even more exciting than normal. Yeah, really. No, not really. I have to caveat that. It is. As I said in the intro, I think it's the best 15 minutes in bike racing, and this weekend we got 30 minutes. In fact, we actually got 45 because we got women's race. We actually got a women's race first, and then we got an extra long, exciting bit in the men's race. As always, the full breakdown of the women's race is going to be over at Wheel Talk. That crew spends an hour talking about nothing but Milan-San Remo. We're going to focus mostly on the men here. So, where do we even start?
Well, not on the podium. Evidently.
Clever kid. When was the last time we saw a Cipressa attack succeed?
I know this. It's 1996, which
Were you born yet, Johnny?
I was 1.5.
Okay.
So well on my way to being a person. It was 1996. Alexandre Gotchenkov and Gabriele Colombo. I think I'm pronouncing those names right. When this was happening, I was
Colombo
18 months old, so Colombo definitely right. And that was the last time the record was set on the Cipressa. The record stuff, I don't know how accurate it is or inaccurate. I'm sure Ronan would have a lot of opinions on how hard it is to actually time it or yada yada yada. Anyway, that record was apparently 9 minutes 17, and because of mostly Tadej Pogačar, that record is down to 8 minutes 45 seconds. And remember, leading into the race, the whole talk was that the Cipressa has to be done under 9 minutes for a group to go. That's well under 9 minutes, 15 seconds under 9 minutes. So that basically set up the whole race. A lot of people are saying we've entered into a new era of Milan-San Remo, and it makes the race even better than it was before, I think.
Well, it was nice to have something at least a little bit unpredictable in the most predictable race of the year.
It's the least predictable race of the year. What are you talking about?
Well, it depends on your definition then. It's people
get too hung up on the first 5.5 hours. Ignore the first 5.5 hours.
The reason when you were talking about is this the best race of the year, whatever, I'm now after an instant classic, it's easy to say it's the best race, but because now when they broadcast the entire 300 kilometers, what it means is you can get up on a Saturday morning if you're UK around 8:30, 9 a.m., put the telly on, watch them all roll out in the freezing cold or the rain, see that everything's going to order, a bike race is happening, and then just switch it off and come back 5 hours later and it's still on, and then settle in. So you get a little bit of a, like you guys waking up in America, get a little taste of it, and then come back to the real action. And now you have the women's race in as well. So it's just hopping back in.
So you get a little bit of an appetizer. I think, but there is still a kind of, I don't know, I suppose you could say the same of any race. There's a pick and mix of maybe 3 or 4 eventualities that could roll out. And I mean, when I was watching it unfold and feverishly writing things down to make sure that I didn't miss anything for the report, I did find myself thinking, well, this was inevitable, that Pogačar was going to go. And Mathieu van der Poel, as we've said a million times before, doesn't turn up to a race where he's not flying. We know that Filippo Ganna is in extraordinary form. And I know that hindsight is a wonderful thing. It's very easy to say in retrospect that was the eventuality that we were going to see. But it's, as exciting as they made it, because we've been saying for a few years that Pogačar's been turning up. He's going to go on the Cipressa, and he's never quite managed it. Or last year, he's going to actually break them on the Poggio, and he didn't manage it. But this year, so the fact that they actually did kind of go and do the thing that everyone's been waiting for them to do was fantastic. But it's still Milan-San Remo, and it's still the same finale, and it's, I don't know. I like a little bit of
it's such a good finale. Like they've designed it perfectly.
It is. No, it's a great finale.
If we shift over momentarily to the women's race, there was a ton of discussion as to whether it would be sort of hard enough to have the Cipressa and the Poggio do anything, right? And it did. Like that race basically played out like many editions of the men's race have played out.
In fact, almost exactly like last year's men's race, right down to the world champion. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that like the finale kind of works regardless, and it genuinely makes me wonder whether the men have to ride 285 kilometers before they get to any is that actually what is making the difference? Or would Pogačar have probably gotten away on the Cipressa almost regardless? Because they're just kind of tapping along for the vast majority of that. It's a 6 hour and 15-minute race. They do training rides that long all the time.
The easiest race to win, the easiest race to finish, the hardest race to win. That's what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And it's like the argument for making the women's race longer is actually, would it make any difference? Probably not, because you couldn't really have the women go and do that massive, great climb, because you would then lose a lot of riders too early, but also they would be doing the same thing. And yesterday they had a massive tailwind. So Vollering said when they hit the Poggio, she didn't notice they were climbing until halfway up because they were still going so fast. Vollering is a Pogačar kind of rider who has to do something incredibly special to win, and it was the first edition.
But in general, a tailwind is going to split things up, right? And it was a huge reason why Pogačar was able to get away with Van der Poel and Ganna on the Cipressa. The fact that they had a tailwind versus last year's headwind made a big difference. So that is it's an important point for the women's race, I think, in particular, which is that if you had a headwind in those two sections, I think you probably just end up with a huge bunch sprint. And that is then maybe worth sort of backing up and saying, okay, well, can you make it hard enough elsewhere to prevent that? Because we did still have it won by the world's best sprinter, right? The women's peloton's best sprinter.
But anyway, it was from a group of 12.
But it's from a group of 12. So it's like kudos to Wiebes for getting over the Poggio, right? We don't want to go sort of deep into the tactics here, how the race is won, which popped up over the weekend. Dane and Cosmo, they went into sort of the tactics in a live show that happened shortly after the event, went into a lot of those details. But we've sort of heard and learned quite a bit in the subsequent 36 hours since between then and recording this podcast, including a great inside the bus UAE video that popped up. They posted it on social media. What's interesting to me about this is that it kind of looked to us like everything pretty much went to plan, but they lay out the plan in this video, and it didn't go exactly to plan, right, Johnny?
Well, you kind of got a sense during the race that things weren't going entirely to plan, because when you entered the Cipressa and there was that crash or bunching right at the bottom, and you could see a few UAE riders, or it's uncertain where everyone was, right? But then you had Tim Wellens on the front, and he did his thing, unleashed Pogačar. But from inside the team bus, and we saw like the full breakdown of their tactics and their plan, more so than you hear from the Tour de France in-car race commentary where they're like, oh, remember to keep eating. This was actually insight. UAE Team Emirates decided to be insightful. Let us actually inside the plan. And you could pause it and see the slideshows that they were showing the riders. And the plan seemed to be that Isaac Del Toro would have been with Tim Wellens to take over and maybe make the Cipressa even harder. Maybe Isaac Del Toro, slight bit of inexperience there to be able to position himself as well, especially when UAE Team Emirates are mostly focusing on helping Pogačar be in the right place. So maybe Del Toro could have made more of a difference there. The other thing they were kind of expecting, or they didn't say this outright, but it looked like this from the slideshow, was that they were at least hoping for Jonathan Narvaez to be in the selection after Pogačar attacked, which then I guess means that then Narvaez could have pulled for Pogačar, maybe set him up again on the Poggio. So that's, these
all sandbagged potentially as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so these things all give us like crumbs to follow to already look forward to next year and see UAE try and figure out exactly how to get Pogačar the victory. What was also interesting in the team bus was how commanding, I guess Pogačar was, like explaining exactly his analysis of the climbs, where were the hard bits, where the easy bits, to like the meter, basically pointing at this zoomed in map, which is not something we see from him often. Obviously, he kind of puts his meme face on in public to, you know, kind of distract really from the seriousness of the competition. But he was like on business in the bus. He was kind of telling everyone what was expected, what to do, sort of telling the DSs, like correcting them on certain parts. So that was super interesting. The other two interesting bits that have come out was a sort of snapshot of motos potentially slowing Pogačar down on the Poggio, which Giannetti, Mauro Giannetti, the Team UAE boss, afterwards said maybe cost him slightly, but regardless, he was like, you know, Mathieu van der Poel probably wins anyway. And backing that up, there was another video that came out, or like a clip of what we saw in the race, where when Pogačar attacked on the Cipressa, one of his attacks, Van der Poel still goes up to the side, collects a bottle from his soigneur, and then just catches back up to Pogačar. So basically, the physics of Milan-San Remo make it impossible at the moment, or how they raced, for Pogačar to beat Van der Poel, which is what Pogačar said. He's like, I'd love to change it from, you know, I'd rather the Poggio was 5 kilometers long at 10%, but you can't really change that.
And that's why he needs to be as detailed about that climb, unlike any other climb.
You have to really extract everything out of those climbs.
Yeah, and in the Alps, he only has to worry about one other rider anyway. And this time
and there's loads of them, and there's loads of climbs, loads of super hard ones, and eventually you'll find out who's the strongest.
Exercise contest, which is why Milan-San Remo is one of the greatest races of the year, because it is anything but an exercise contest. If I wanted to watch an exercise contest, I'd go, I don't know, watch triathlon. I have no interest.
Yeah, did we enjoy sad Pogačar on the podium?
Yes, we did. Very much.
I mean, I didn't enjoy it.
No, but
Not enjoy it. That's the wrong word.
Well, as Dane wrote, it's rare that we see him, and you could almost see the cogs turning. It's kind of going, what do I have to do? Slightly offset by the fact that he looked like he was wearing his dad's tracksuit with that ridiculously oversized podium jacket, which he's been wearing a few times now.
I like it,
but it's not a race fit jacket. It's just something that Pisse has produced for I guess, so that you can layer up properly or shove a towel around your neck. I don't know. But yeah, I think we should say something about Filippo Ganna, because his ride was the race of the day for me.
Absolutely.
It was incredible. He was, just kind of like practically hauling himself up by the rope up that climb. You want
to save that sort of 15 minutes of video and like show it to juniors. You know? Like, never stop racing. Never, ever stop. Just put your head down and keep going hard, and you never know what's going to happen. And, he probably could have backed off 10% and still come in third, right? And instead kept his head down and, come in second, right? So you absolutely never know what's going to happen in a bike race, and you can absolutely never give up. It was a super impressive ride, and he was struggling from what, 2 minutes into the initial attack on the Cipressa, right?
Yeah,
like
but he
barely hanging on.
Yeah,
it was great. The question that I didn't see we got an answer in commentary was when Pogačar. Well, this is because I was popping in and out of watching the race. I'm not watching all 300 kilometers, but suddenly
you're popping in and out on the Cipressa though.
Not on the Cipressa, sorry, the whole race. But like when we finally saw, maybe this is a fair way back before the Cipressa, when Pogačar emerged in his white skin suit when he started the day in his dark like rain gear. But then I tried to figure it out, and it looks like he was wearing that. Was he wearing that underneath?
Yeah, he was wearing it underneath. I'm absolutely convinced, because there are various. Well, it might have been damp, but I don't know. He was wearing clearly just overshorts, leg warmers, a black rain cape, possibly an extra jersey under the rain cape, and his massive neoprene mitts. He was wearing this kind of padless over bike shorts that were just, because you can see.
Cyclocross item. I think
there are a couple of shots where you can see a kind of roll of white underneath his jacket.
Yeah. Because there was discussion in commentary that he had stripped entirely naked at the side of the road at some point, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that never happens, and surely he wouldn't do that. But maybe he would. Maybe that's how desperate he was.
I think that. I mean, maybe he did. There were a few tunnels, but And he did say at one point, thanks to my teammates for for bottles and food and clothing changes. And it's like, or changes of clothes. And
you're thinking they like gathered round
yeah,
him
yeah,
in
just
a
like with
protective
towels.
shield.
But I think,
it's
based
Europe,
on
he would just get naked.
yeah, well, yeah,
It's
yeah.
Europe.
Well, he would have got a hefty fine from the UCI.
Yeah, imagine.
But yeah, but yeah, no, I'm pretty sure he was just wearing everything underneath, and there was his white socks at least were showing signs of rain. The only sign of what had been earlier on in the day.
Speaking of fines, Maxime Van Hils was given a yellow card, fined 500 Swiss francs and 25 UCI points for, in quotes, throwing away a bidon in a dangerous manner, which, that could mean a whole number of things. Yeah, not supposed to do that. I imagine it probably like bounced back into the bunch, something like that. But it was the La Flamme Rouge on Twitter shared this. Apparently, you're not supposed to get a yellow card until you do this twice.
Yeah. So either the UCI aren't very good at recording their own infractions, or he's been done dirty. The only other, I'm just like, we're on Milan-San Remo cleanup duty here. Well, Ferrand Prévot was also given a yellow card and a fine,
Yes.
but her fine was only 200 Swiss francs, and arguably for a more dangerous, risky move in the sprint. And I don't, it wasn't. I don't think she did it. Well, no, I'm sure she didn't do it deliberately. It's maybe a kind of hangover from actually not being in a bunch sprint particularly often lately. But you kind of body checked Noemi Ruig in the sprint, so she got a yellow card, relegation, and a 200 Swiss franc fine. That's just an interesting kind of. I mean, I don't think they're different, the men's and women's.
The other thing, another record was broken, the women's podium record, which was originally held since 2017 by Ilaria Sanguinetti of, I think it's about 7 minutes, 17 seconds. That's now down to 6 minutes, 42 seconds. Demi Vollering has that record. So very fast. Everyone is just very fast.
And Puck Peters had broken it on Friday, making everyone go, ooh.
On a recon?
Yeah. That was doing the rounds. But then, of course, everyone went through, including Vollering. I think that Vollering's achievement was to just bounce up the final few meters and get the nudge on the descent, which was basically all she could do, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Question. So, obviously, say it a million times. Great day of bike racing. Great finale of bike racing. Great that you could watch, the women's finale when the men's was still a bit boring, and then tune in for the men's after. Do we need more of this sort of course design in bike racing more generally? And why don't other races be like, let's just try and do what is good? Why do we just settle for, I'll say it, boring bunch sprints?
I mean, yeah, we do. Like the races that are currently working, right? Some of them are quite old. Obviously, you got Flanders and Roubaix, and they're on this sort of like, it's just so hard end of the spectrum, and that's what works, right? But that works in a very different way. I would say Roubaix is both a combination of very hard and also just chaotic and unpredictable. Because, like, what is good sport? Good sport is unpredictability. And you could argue that, a bunch sprint is very unpredictable, right? But the problem is a bunch sprint is unpredictable for about 15 seconds. And Milan-San Remo gives you at least 15 minutes, right? That is a significant improvement on that, or orders of magnitude.
You don't want to find yourself hoping for a crash to see an underdog win a sprint.
No. I think more races could. I think the tricky thing is on a course like that, if it wasn't Milan-San Remo, if it didn't have all the pomp and circumstance, if it didn't have the history behind it, I think it would actually get raced differently, right? I think it would be a sprint most of the time, because I think that like riders almost sort of wouldn't really know how to approach it. Like if you just sort of built a similar finale, but it didn't have the gravitas behind it, you wouldn't.
If it was
have
stage
insane
6 of the Giro d'Italia, it would be a sprint.
Then it would be a sprint of like 75 riders that come across because everybody else is like, I don't feel like going hard up the Poggio, right? So I think it would be raced differently, and that would be the kind of tricky thing as to how you figure out how to do that. What they should do is like the Giro should use the exact same finale. right?
And
like
put a bunch of bonus seconds on the finish line or something.
Just like for fun, or like the tour skips into other countries all the time. Drop the tour down there.
Yeah.
It's right next to France. It's it's like half an hour from France.
And the tour does kind of do that. Like we've seen, they put these launch pads in, especially for those opening stages when you've got the yellow jersey, which is kind of provides a Milan-San Remo-esque, carrot
Prestige,
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So maybe and I'm not saying we need every race like this, just like more like those tour stages.
What the word you just used, Johnny, is the right one. Launch pad. Like when you're creating at the end of a course, I think that too often the default is like, well, just stick a climb at the end, right? And they'll ride around and then they'll duke it down the climb, and that part will be exciting. And it's the safest bet because it kind of guarantees you, however long that climb is. Let's say it's a 10-minute climb, it guarantees you 10 minutes of decent racing, right? But it's not really a launch pad, and it becomes just a generally, not all the time, but generally becomes just an exercise contest for those last 10 minutes, right? You like whoever has the highest watts per kilo is probably an 8 the most all day is probably going to be winning up that particular climb. But if you put these launch pads in, if you put them in the right place, and I credit where credit is due. The Tour has been doing this. The Giro has been doing this for a while. The Giro after its Zomagnan era, which was sort of like, let's make every stage as hard as humanly possible. Once they got out of that, they've started to shift into this kind of launch pad style course design. And I think that it is dramatically improved the way that the most Giro stages end. There's some other issues like maybe don't put like a launch pad. The launch pad is a 180-degree corner in a sprint stage kind of thing. Like that's not the best kind of launch pad. But in general, I think the course design is heading that direction, and we should see more of it.
But it also depends a little bit on what time of year the race is, because for instance, the Eschborn Frankfurt, which has been named all sorts of things over the past several years, it's not that old, but it's a bloody great race, but nobody cares. Because it's in, like, what is it?
It's in Frankfurt.
It's in May and it's in Frankfurt. But it's often, it's got two pretty big climbs. It's not particularly suited to sprinters anymore, but they do still turn up because there's a flat finish in Frankfurt. And there is a kind of launch pad, reasonably close to the finish, and it's steep, but it's at the wrong time of year and it's in the wrong place. So there are a lot of parameters that you've got to squeeze in. If it comes too close to the Grand Tours or after the Grand Tours, or kind of in the weird window between, there's so many things you've got to get right.
I also need the biggest riders to be doing these things. Like in the men's Milan-San Remo, when you could see Pogačar attacking on the Poggio, where you've seen him pulling faces and looking exasperated like he never has before. Because obviously in the Tour, the frustration isn't there because there's always tomorrow, or he knows that he's been beaten by Vingegaard. Whereas the way that he was, he was almost Jonathan Milan-esque. Some of that straining,
some of the gurning, which
was amazing. Amazing to see. Great for the overall narrative. It would have been great either way. If Pogačar wins, fantastic, amazing he's pulled off. But now, for him to have had this setback, even better.
Well, Johnny, speaking of gurning, I think the next question for me is: Are we going to see more Poggy gurning in northern France in a couple of weeks' time? Because the sort of discussion prior was if he wins San Remo, for some reason that then he's like allowed to race Roubaix or something, but which doesn't make any real sense. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. Regardless, he hasn't won San Remo.
No, and he was beaten by Mathieu van der Poel, not on flat terrain, whereas Paris-Roubaix is pretty damn flat.
I will say that I am less confident in my Pogačar wins Roubaix prediction after watching Van der Poel just sit behind him for 20K.
I will stand by my Pogačar won't win Paris-Roubaix 2025, but I'm even more sure that he will race it, as long as the forecast isn't for snow or torrential rain. He is going to be in the area that week. I would put money on it, but because he's got to, if he wants to win it someday, he's unlikely. How many times do people win it on a first try?
Yeah, true.
He's got to have raced it once or twice before he really has a chance of winning it. Maybe, if you were going to bet on anyone winning it for the first time, he'd be a fair bet, but there would be probably a few people who'd have to not turn up, and Mathieu van der Poel is evidently in some absolutely crazy form. So, yeah, But I think he'll be there.
The decision is imminent this week. We've been told imminent,
and they're much less kind of it's not going to happen now. They're just like, we'll just say something soon. It's okay.
Well, I did mention on this podcast that I have good information, not from a good source, directly from the source that he intends to race it.
Well, and they were saying last week, UAE Emirates were giving weird responses last week, being like, we've got our press team in motion to make an announcement, and it's like, we wouldn't be having to say no, he's not doing something. That's just like,
or Pogačar saying, I'm not saying anything about that now. It's like, okay.
But look, his upcoming participations are E3 on Friday, Gent-Wevelgem on Sunday, and then the Tour of Flanders a week after that. So does that sound like someone who's going to race Paris-Roubaix? Kind of. If we're being honest, like, come on.
Well, it's weird. It's simultaneously, we are very lucky to have Pogačar in this sport, and I think sometimes feel a little bit unlucky to have him in the sport, right? Like, you take him out, and all of a sudden it's like, feels like
he's a net positive.
Field.
But he made Milan-San Remo so much more exciting than it has been usually. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when was the last time we saw that type of rider do that? Like, Nibali was probably the last time. And I was watching that video the other day, and like, God, the bars were so wide. I know I'm going to sound like Ronan here, but man, they're so unaerodynamic. And then so they finally broke the Cipressa record, right? It's from '96. If you could watch or look at photos from that time, they're literally they're wearing parachutes. They're literally wearing parachutes. How many watts were those guys putting out in 1996? On what sort of incredible training
regimen?
Whoa, just unbelievable. Because like, they should be going faster today than they were back then, right? Like, the fact that it took that long to beat the Cipressa record is crazy. Because they're like, just aerodynamics alone, they're probably putting out 30-40 watts less to do the exact same speed as they were back then. It is absolutely nuts. All right. Is that enough San Remo?
Yeah,
I mean,
a great week for bike racing.
Never enough San Remo.
Yeah.
Never enough.
And I don't think the argument can be made that makes it more special and better, because when, like, it's only up to a certain limit that good things don't become good by having more of it, right? We could have more than one sort of Milan-San Remo, and we'd still enjoy it as much. Say if there's one in like 4 months, it'd be great, or 5 months, fine.
I'd watch it again.
Pogačar would be delighted.
Again, if the big names show up and care, that's the.
They would care less though if it wasn't every year. Every year new people coming up. Anyway, let's not. We could keep going. This is another whole essay subject.
Maybe that's what we use the Saudi One Cycling money for. Just like
multiple
3 million quid on the finish line of a Milan-San Remo-esque like Eschborn Frankfurt or whatever.
It's not a bad idea.
Got to spend it somewhere. Yeah,
not a bad idea. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Mess Pedersen's gross drink. And the unfortunate demise of the UCI Track Champions League.
Sad face.
Welcome back, everybody. We forgot something from Milan-San Remo.
We did. Yes.
So, should we change our style guide?
To what? What's this?
It's currently Milan-San Remo, which is
as
the name of the race,
right?
And crucially, San Remo we have as 2 words.
Yeah.
The actual if you go to the town on the sign, it's 1 word. So why do we do that?
If we change, if we change our saga, then it's got to be Milano-San Remo.
Right. Yeah, you got to do both. Obviously.
So I'm just checking that's what you were advocating.
Like Milano-Torino.
Milano-San Remo sounds better. We don't say Milan-Torino or Milan-Turin.
I've been doing a version for this job for how long now? Like 6 years, and every spring I have to discuss this internally.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm at the point where I just don't care.
Yeah.
Just gonna.
I just checked with Dane on Friday. I was like, okay.
Milan-Nice race. Whatever.
We could
Sounds
get.
Good.
Do we think that Matt Denif and Dane agree on this?
Well, and then chuck a Joe Lindsay into the mix, and then we're gonna have a 7-day summit.
I think we get the 3 of them, and we have some sort of like round robin arm wrestling competition, and whoever wins,
who would win that?
Podcasting for people who people who can't get to sleep at night. Yeah, grammar. I know loads of people will disagree. Grammar is in my top 3 least important things in the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's why I have to get heavily edited a lot of the time.
Okay.
I care deeply about bits of it. Anyway, sorry about that small tangent. It's been bothering me. I think I might.
Oh, Kaylee, come on! You've got 2 young kids. You're running a business. You must have more to worry about than this. Come on.
No, this is what I've been thinking about all weekend. So we did forget something else from Milano-San Remo. Pidcock.
Rob Hatch.
Yes. Yeah. Poor Pidcock.
Rob Hatch's call at the end of.
Oh my God, that guy's a genius.
We have been gifted a race with Ganna now joining in that red, orange and fade to black on the left. Now then, who's going to go here? Pogačar off the back, waiting and ready to go. The meters tick by. They're all wary. They'll look at each other. Here is Van der Poel who launches it. It is Van der Poel who's gone at the front. Pogačar's taken the position at the back, but can they get him back? It is Van der Poel going all the way at the minute. Van der Poel's still there. Ganna trying to come around him. Mathieu Van der Poel's going to have it, and Mathieu Van der Poel does it yet again. What on earth have we just seen? La Classicissima living right up to its name. This is cycling at its very best.
They posted it like TNT, whatever they posted on Instagram. I was actually just direct messaging real quick and like so good. Just shout out to Rob because
shout out to Rob all the time. Yeah, so good.
So good. Anyway, sorry. Now I don't know what I'm up to.
Speaking
today.
of, Rob's fellow Brit.
There we go. There we go.
There we go. So Tom Pidcock was obviously I don't know if he was a favourite to the level of Pogačar and Van der Poel, but he was a contender at least. But he was nowhere to be seen really after what we've now discovered. Pidcock has said he crashed at the bottom of the Cipressa, or was held up at the bottom of the Cipressa, which saw him out the back on the climb. And then I think the last we really saw him on the TV coverage was dangling slightly off the back of the group on the descent. Maybe he was catching back on.
He caught back on right at the end, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
say it with your chest, guys. What are we building up to here?
I know I should be a Pidcock supporter, but I don't think he'd have been there, even if he'd been on Ganna's wheel.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think he's been riding really well, and I think he maybe would have hung on there. And plus, Ganna makes a nice big draft, so you never know.
That is true, yeah.
Particularly for Pidcock, who's about a foot shorter. No, but the bigger thing is that if you were caught in that crash on the Cipressa, you were in the wrong spot.
Yes, that's also true.
Yeah, so like whether you were caught in that crash or not, you're like in 20th or 30th wheel. And you're 90 seconds away from Pogačar lighting it up, you're not closing the 20-30 wheel gap anyway. So it's almost like the crash is a kind of irrelevant thing. He was in the wrong position. He should have been sitting on Ganna's wheel or something, right? And he wasn't. And so it's a bit of an excuse that it's just not really relevant to the end of the race, I don't think.
Okay. Well, okay. What about, seeing as him and his team are all research scientists?
Oh yeah, research analysts, research scientists.
Yeah, it says it on their mitts and their shorts and their helmets or their caps or whatever. To do that, you have to collect a lot of data, so you have to be in many different places within the peloton.
There we go. He was just doing research.
So he was just out there, I don't know, doing something with Pipette.
He probably did one of the fastest descents of the race. Yeah.
And look, if we're thinking of ways to make Milan-San Remo even better, wouldn't it be like Pidcock descent of the Poggio, trying to
but you want to have a downhill time trial again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but that's the way that Pidcock wins it, isn't it? He's got to get on the descent. Although
I'm just saying he brings an edge to the proceeding that would have made it even better. I'm just thinking why we added this to the run sheet. Riders crash all the time, things don't go their way all the time. Is this payback for my Jonathan Milan sort of stuff?
No, we just love hanging out in Pidcock Paddock, and we hadn't been there in a while. We missed it.
True. He was my pick for the weekend. Dane Cash did message over the weekend, because he's not on today, saying to make sure we have to mention that he picked 2 winners. Wrong clock's right twice a day, so that's a bit harsh.
That is quite harsh, but it's good.
But he's not here to defend himself.
Let's continue I want to hear about Mads Pedersen's yucky drink.
Yeah, we finally got there after however long of Milan-San Remo talk, but it was worth it. Doesn't matter. Mads Pedersen. So we all remember before Milan-San Remo at Paris-Nice, he was climbing pretty well, wasn't he, Mads Pedersen?
Oh, extremely well.
Extremely well. Well, it turns out that not only is there a reason for this, that Mads Pedersen is yet another person who has a podcast. Did you know that?
Oh, is that his podcast?
It's his podcast with Jakob Ekholm.
Oh, yeah.
Who is he still a current rider? He definitely was a rider.
I think he was re-signed. Or was he? He might be one of the Gravelistas.
So Jakob Ekholm was a former Trek Segafredo rider. He now rides for Airtox Carl Ras, which is a Danish continental team. But here's a podcast with Mads Pedersen. They were discussing things, including Mads Pedersen, what he drinks during a race, especially when he really needs to go that little bit faster up a climb. So are you ready for what goes in Mads Pedersen's, bottle in a race?
Okay. I suppose I need to be.
Yes, if you need to put a bucket next to you, now is your opportunity. In it, this is Mads Pedersen's words on the Lang Distance podcast. A cocktail of broccoli, sodium bicarbonate, and Monster energy drink.
Oh,
God. That sounds frothy.
Is it bad that I was doing okay with that until we got to the Monster? It's until that point, you're just kind of a gross smoothie, and then you've added the Monster, and it's really just kicked it up a notches.
It goes from suggestion from a wellness influencer to you're cleaning up after like a weird party you've had, and you're just decanting all the different glasses into one thing to make it easier to clean up. So
although speaking of cleaning up, I hope they throw away those bidons. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah, and I pray for whoever shares a room with Mads Pedersen while he's down in this concoction, because that's not pretty. He calls it a Monner, Monner. So I don't know if he's got the trademark for that yet.
Was that not what he calls the Monster?
Oh, I thought that was I thought Monner was like the whole thing together. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to maybe talk to him at some point. But the broccoli comes in a concentrated form, so it's not just like he's getting a bunch of like tender stem and whizzing up in a NutriBullet. It's apparently a supplement called Nomio, which is said to help lower the lactate level in the blood. So there is like science behind this. He's not just like some gross dude who stumbled upon this thing that works.
Yeah.
Is it bicarb as well? Okay, there we go. Maybe the bicarb's in there as well, but he likes it with a Monster energy drink, which is so perfectly like he needs to be there with Dylan van Baarle in his like Letterman team jacket, just downing a can of.
He also though specified that he has the sugar free on a sprint stage so that he can get the calculations better fixed for his. And then when he's got to do Lizard Climb, he just goes all out on the sugar.
Interesting.
Is this a pre-race or a mid-race?
This is during the race.
During the race.
During the race.
During the race. Yeah.
And it's a whole monster.
Some things are just not worth winning a bike race for.
Or saying out loud in public.
Or saying out loud, yeah. Well, maybe he hoped that nobody would translate the podcast.
You know how we've been on Mads Pedersen Transfer Watch?
Yeah.
Do we think he is, so tied to the Monster energy drink being part of this concoction that this rules out Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe as a potential destination for 2026?
Oh,
I would think so.
Well, I noticed, and it's as we usually have to, as we usually often find ourselves saying, this may mean absolutely nothing, but I did notice, and I can't remember if it was Giannetti or Matt Zinn, but after Milan-San Remo on Saturday, they said the only person who was missing from that group when their rider Pogačar had attacked was the great Mads Pedersen.
The great Mads Pedersen.
Well, it was of the top riders in cycling at the moment. The only one that was missing was Mads Pedersen. I was like, that rings a bell.
Okay,
but again, it may mean absolutely nothing. It may just be respect, which
it means everything. To me, that means everything. That's going down in my notebook, on my wall planner of what's happening to Mads Pedersen.
Did you notice the giant little Trek banner at the top of Poggio? With the big inflatable jersey.
Oh yes, sorry, yes.
You know what they were hoping for there.
Yes,
what they were hoping for. They were hoping for like a Pedersen Milan, like sweeping around the corner off the front, and instead nothing.
Or Elisa Balsamo, but unfortunately,
yeah, that's true. They had two goes. Yeah, I mean, look, that's the risk inherent with brand activations.
That's true.
Alpecin, they'll be crossing their fingers tight all week leading up to Paris-Roubaix that they get yet another Alpecin shower shot.
Yep.
They'll get Alps and shower shots regardless, and then if they lose, then it'll just be a kind of gritty black and white photo instead of colour.
An empty bottle, just like the contents just disappearing,
just on its side
down the drain.
You know our member trip that's coming up, and we ride Roubaix cobbles on the Tuesday, I think, and then we finish at the showers. And we have arranged a professional photographer for anybody who wants their naked butt shot in the showers.
Wow,
just like the
that's cool.
Okay. Didn't think that was where that was going. What sort of trip is this?
Huh? Well, you can stay inside the shower if you want, and you can be quite modest. But
I'll be at the cafe around the corner if anyone wants to come and hang out with me in a more civilized area. Speaking of things going down the drain, UCI Track Champions League.
Oh man.
Sorry to do you like that, Kit.
Top segue.
Oh well.
Well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Okay, so
official.
Kit, give us a brief background here, just for those who are not.
The Track Champions League has had its 4th year in 2024, end of last year. And yeah, it when it was launched at the end of 2021, it was meant to be this kind of get track cycling in front of new eyes, give the riders more opportunities to race each other, and to create more of a kind of spectacle, festive atmosphere, and to just kind of, spice it up a little bit, because, a track competition typically lasts about a week and everything's pretty well spaced out. And it's, by all accounts, has been fairly successful. I think they would have liked to sell a lot more tickets, and especially at the at the events in, for instance, Berlin. I went to the Berlin round, and I think it was the first or the second year, and it didn't help that it was snowing, but it was about half full. But the London rounds and the Paris round have always been really well supported. But more to the point, it's been great for the riders, and especially in the build up to the Olympics, where, for instance, Harry Lavriesen and Matthew Richardson, they met each other at least twice a night for 5 weekends straight, and they don't do that. Before the Champions League, they might meet 3 times a year, and one of them would be World Championships, one of them would be some random Nations Cup in Turkey, the other would be in a Nations Cup in Brisbane, and one of them would get food poisoning, so they wouldn't get to race each other. And the Track Champions League was a kind of, it's that sort of, it happens, but the Track Champions League has the same riders competing against each other, touring various countries in Europe, and it was of all the riders that I spoke to, because I everyone knows that I'm a big track fan, and I've spoken to a bunch of the riders over the past few years and been to a couple of the events, and from everyone that I spoke to, they loved the opportunity to just test things out, because if you turn up at the World Championships, you're not going to try out new tactics. You're going to go there and you're going to do what the tried and tested, go for it. Track Champions League, you do get UCI points, and you can qualify for things like the World Championships there, but you have so many more opportunities to try something out. And so it was a really great additional prep for the Olympics. Unfortunately, it was run very well through Discovery Eurosport with the help of UCI, and obviously it was arranged, it was organized by a separate entity, but it was run by Discovery, which we know what's happened there. Warner Brothers, Discovery, goodbye Track Champions League. So it's another one of those things that it was always going to happen. I think it's probably a fairly small blip at the end of a spreadsheet for Warner Brothers, and pretty easy to get rid of.
Yeah, and it was supposed to go 8 years, and it made it 4. So,
which is pretty good, I reckon.
Yeah, it was a positive thing. I think that what was sort of missing was like what were the track events that were happening in the UK like 10 years ago? What were those called? Revolution? What was the?
Oh yeah, the Revolution series.
Yeah, the Revolution series, where like you'd get Wiggins and Cav to show up, and it would just be insane, right? Like it would sell out, and it was this crazy cool atmosphere. And I think that was maybe what was kind of missing, was a bit of kind of like road crossover star power, basically. And so it just never really sort of fully took off, despite the fact that like every time we hear about One Cycling or like any of the other half dozen different things that have popped up over the years, they all sound basically like, let's just reinvent track racing, right? And it should work. You can sell tickets. It's exciting racing that happens over a couple minutes instead of a couple hours, like all these sort of things that line up. But yeah, you didn't have maybe the star power, and now it's dead.
Yeah,
Warner
all
Brothers
the
has
sprinters
decided
turned up, but
not
yeah,
to end it,
yeah.
or not to continue.
It is a real shame. And then there's the interesting additional point that came with the press release that the UCI will now try and reinvigorate. Well, actually, it said it was going to relaunch the Nations Cup into the World Cup, which it has been before. It was the World Cup until they renamed it the Nations Cup in 2021. But if you speak to any track riders now, they invariably call any Nations Cup the World Cup, because that's what they've always called it. They've always known it's that. But I mean, this year, for instance,
it's always been like World Cups have been a thing in cycling for decades and decades. Yeah. Stop trying to rename things.
Yeah,
I want that to just name things back and forth. Sounds great.
Yeah, we're reinventing it with a new name. I mean, obviously this year is a weird year because it's the very beginning of the Olympic cycle. But there is only one Nations Cup, and it was last weekend.
So that's it. So
that's the only other international track cycling event this year, as far as I know, is the World Championships.
The long and short of it is that Warner Brothers, Discovery, whatever, for a while they were in a kind of growth phase, like let's put some money into cycling and see how big we can get this sport to be. And now they are in the opposite, and everything is contracting. And yeah, we've seen it all over the place, right? We see it everything from Tour de France coverage to the death of the Track Champions League.
It's in San Juan, Argentina in October.
The other thing that, speaking of Warner Brothers ruining things, something that I did notice. Did you see this, Johnny, at the end of last week when Christian Prudhomme was in Edinburgh last Wednesday, doing a lot of festive fun with Mark Cavendish at the castle and what have you, to launch the Grand Depart here. And he said rather enticingly that he hopes that there'll be free coverage of the Grand Departs in the UK.
They'll put it on the BBC or something.
They'll put it on the BBC, or they'll put it on. They'll probably more likely try and get it to one of the channels with adverts.
They'll put it on like their whatever the version of like Watch or UK TV Gold is, where they used to put like the championship football highlights.
Yeah, where you get 15 minutes of terrible adverts. Might
have that. Sorry, but anyway. Correction. It was supposed to be San Juan, Argentina, but it's now going to be held in Santiago, Chile, which is maybe even more fun, to be honest.
Good wine. In both parts,
perfect.
Both countries.
I mean, look, we can wrap this up in a second. It's a shame. I think I remember going to the launch of the Track Champions League, and I think I subsequently didn't get invited to any events that was like the PR company were also running, because I treated it as like a proper like Q&A thing. So I remember asking the people who like the UCI and Warner Brothers Discovery people who like the panel for the journalists to ask questions of, asking them like, people don't really care about track cycling like compared to like other cycling. What is this actually going to do to make it exciting and interesting to people outside of people who are like track cycling? And the problem is that they didn't really have much of an answer there, because it's super hard to actually invent new things and get people interested. And you kind of need things to come together, right? I think the reason why cycling has road cycling has held on to some extent is because we've had these amazing athletes and characters, come through like Pogačar. I think if we didn't have a Pogačar in road cycling for the past few years, I kind of dread to think what state road cycling would be in. So maybe that's what we need to get back to in track cycling. Maybe you need a few more, crossover stars. But the problem is, especially when the sport is looking so precarious, the riders who would have maybe combined track and road back in the day will now be increasingly more incentivized to just pursue a road career where you can make kind of decent money. So I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it is just holding them all in Chile and having lovely wine while you watch trackside.
Does the UK development system still basically force everybody through the track?
No,
because it did for a long time, and that's part of the reason why like any sort of top level British racer could always go back and race track, because they all had done it already, right? Pretty much all of them. The Yates brothers accepted, right?
Oh, Simon Yates is a former world champion of the track.
Okay, so then even Simon.
Yeah, just Adam.
I just know that they were kind of pushed out of the development system a bit early, weren't
they? Simon wasn't. Adam was. Adam was kind of he had to scramble his way alongside his identical twin brother, which you'd think that you'd kind of go, oh, he's good. Surely he's going to be good too. Maybe he's just not got the discipline. But anyway, I don't know. I won't go on about it, but I think it's I don't know. I don't know that they needed the road stars for the Track Champions League necessarily. They had Katie Archibald, who has done a bit of road, and she is they had at least 4 fantastically big characters, and they were very lucky to have 2 incredible sprinters in Lavreyson and Richardson who really created a narrative. But there's so much luck involved, and I think after their first year, they actually realised that the people that they were really trying to get involved were already interested in track cycling. It was just trying to keep them engaged all year round, and with the exception of the odd initiative of creating that app where you could feel a rider's heartbeat in your palm. Do you remember I wrote about this?
Oh,
they did. They had a companion app. So the stats and the data that you'd have on the screen. They created an app to go with that, so you could track an individual rider, but you could also make your phone. You could select an option that would make your phone vibrate in time with that rider's heartbeat live. Oh
my god,
that was weird. But there was a lot of they realized that track cycling fans are often data nerds, so they really leaned into that. And I think I was a little. I mean, I went the opposite of Johnny, and I went all kind of like, oh god, yeah, track, woo! And they invited me to Germany to basically give me a VIP treatment. Yeah. But it's
pissed in the cornflakes and got banned.
But I think I still thought, I'm not sure this is going to last, because they threw a lot at it in that first year, but it they managed to keep it going for 4 years.
One final idea before we move on. What about if say you're a World Tour sprinter, maybe you've won like a Grand Tour stage or whatever, but then you don't win for like a couple seasons, you then have to go and race track for like a year to earn your spot.
You get relegated.
You get relegated. So basically, make it the sprinter version of becoming a gravel guy. So you go and race the track, because then you'd have having like Fabio Jakobsen.
Can you imagine Jasper Philipsen on the track?
Yeah, maybe he gets an exemption because that would be too much of a disaster. But like maybe these like guys who are looking to hang on, like a last chance saloon, and they're all competing for like a World Tour prime sprinter slot in the Tour. I mean, this is a ridiculous concept, but that would be fun.
A lot of them do that in 6 days, and also Elia Viviani did exactly this. He got a lotto contract after spending the winter racing track bikes.
True. Yeah. I need some edge. I need a bit of something.
Johnny, you are not. If we were sitting in Belgium or Holland right now, we'd be all sobbing our eyes out because we'd have spent our childhoods going to 6 days.
Yeah, and needing liver transplants. Yeah.
Well, true.
All right, that's enough. That's enough track.
R.I.P. Track Champions League.
R.I.P.
We hardly knew thee.
Yep. Yeah. Literally. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, Vingegaard goes back in his bike, but skipped Catalonia. Let's talk about it. Welcome back, everybody. Jonas Vingegaard is back on his bicycle after his crash. He's had to skip Catalonia, which is kicking off right now. Potentially adds another race before the Dauphiné. Is any significant impact here? I mean, it doesn't really feel like it.
It just means that Mikel Landa might win a race this week if he can make Primoz Roglic struggle. So I don't know.
Maybe. The Jonas Vingegaard basically told Danish media this week, I guess when he was saying he wouldn't be at Catalonia, that he opened up a bit more on him leaving Paris-Nice, saying, confirming about how dizzy he was after his crash, after that stage. He said he was very nauseous, incredibly tired, and that lasted for like a number of days. So this basically was like
concussion.
A decent sized concussion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not good at all. So I guess
was that partly in response to all the numpties who were saying Vingegaard didn't have the balls to stand up to anyone about the weather, because there was a lot of vitriol about
Philippe Gilbert was back on his back being a bit of a weirdo,
and Joao Almeida was pretty cross with him but yeah, if the guy could barely see straight, give him a break.
But did he crash before? Did he crash before that?
He'd crashed. I think he crashed like fairly early in the stage and injured.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that? It was quite early.
Then apologies should be in the post. But yeah, so presumably this doesn't impact him too much on the lead up to the Tour. Maybe
the next World Tour stage race is Basque Country.
I mean, it's a head injury, so it really depends. Like,
this is true.
Yeah, you got to be sure.
You can't really start training until you're feeling better, and it could be really quite dangerous not to listen to your body in that way, right? Listen to your doctors. So I mean, it could potentially sort of be more damaging to his season than, like a broken collarbone or something, right? Like it all depends on how quickly he comes back, and it's one of those injuries we can't see, right? And neither can anyone else. So, yeah. I mean, fingers crossed that it's not that serious.
Look,
but
if he's back on his bike, that's a great sign. And if he's talking to media, that's also a good sign.
True.
Yeah.
He'll be all right. Don't worry.
Fingers crossed, because head injuries suck.
I think he should go to the Tour of Slovenia because Tadej Pogačar is not.
Kit.
Yeah.
That is a good shout. That is a great shout.
Although that would mean he wouldn't go to the Dauphiné, I think, so that wouldn't make sense. But that's one of the upcoming stage races. I don't think he'd go to Basque Country, but yeah.
What about if he did a week of the Giro to train and then get the Italians all really cross and then be like, no, I was just here to train? That could work.
I think that's a great idea, actually. Yeah. My guess is that he will just race even less now.
Probably. I mean, that's what you're incentivized to do, right? That's how this whole thing works.
Until his boss says, no, one cycling, you're going to race all the races.
Yes, that is true.
Marc Madiot is opposed to foreign...
Marc Madiot is Marc Madioting.
Yeah.
I love it.
Unsurprisingly, noted, confirmed Frenchman, Marc Madiot, is opposed to the Tour de France starting
Cross is the word.
In places that are not France.
He's not opposed. He doesn't mind doing it from time to time, which God knows what that means. But he doesn't like how often it's leaving France. He was on the RMC Sport radio station, which seems to be like not speaking French and judging it based on vibes alone. Seems to be like the talk sport of French sport media radio. Anyway, he said I think we don't have to just look at the financial side. This is a race about France. We can't just keep going everywhere. Bearing in mind we've got Lille this year, but I think it's in response to the UK getting 2027. But then if you look back, so that by 2027,
Battle Hastings, all that sort of good stuff,
if by 2027, the last 7 Grand Departs will have been not in France. Which maybe does seem a bit excessive. But then if we look back to when Marc Madiot was racing the Tour de France, so he did 9 Tours de France, 4 of them were abroad back then.
It's not new.
No, it's not new. But it's when he said before too long, half the race will be outside of France. It's like, mate, there's never been more than 3 stages.
Yeah, well sometimes they dip into like Andorra or Switzerland for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, but that's just moving over the border.
Tour of Colorado, just like give us like 7 to 10 days, and then just ship everyone over, right? That's where we're going with this, right? Tour de France.
According to him, yeah.
Wasn't there a suggestion that there would? Yeah, there was a suggestion that there would be a Grand Depart in Canada once, wasn't there?
Well, the Giro talked about starting on the East Coast, like near DC.
I don't mind any of this. Those open. We have 21 states. It's not like there's no racing. Like put it wherever you want. I think the more egregious oversight from Marc Madiot is that during during the mid 80s, I don't think he raced all of them, but in 3 out of 4 tours, right in the middle of that decade, 3 of them happened all within the Ile-de-France region, which is where traditionally the race would always start. But then they kind of got that out of their system and realized they could move it around a bit, but then returned to that for 3 years, like in a row. So that's more like if Marc Madiot wants it to go back to France, say we had it in Lille just every single year.
That's France. Don't want to stay in the same place all the time, right?
Yeah, it's just look, Marc Madiot he said the things to make us react to it, and we've done that.
Yeah,
so
there we go. Yep.
He's learning from Richard Plugger. I can't wait to see how disappointed he is when he just arrives in the UK. Like this happened in Italy. Do you remember, Kaylee, when he finally got back to France on like stage 4?
Oh yeah.
And he was just like walking down the road, so happy to be back in France. Like he could finally breathe again because he was back in the only country worth being in the world. And that's the sort of patriotism I think I can get behind that.
I think somebody's got to turn up at the bus at the beginning of the first stage in Edinburgh and hand him a deep fried Mars bar. And
no, we've got to deep fry something French to like really get his
fried chocolate croissant.
Yes, perfect.
Or chocolate, depending on which part of France you're in.
Yes.
Or frog
leg.
Okay,
sorted.
Or frog leg. Yeah.
Yes. Should we talk about another confirmed Frenchman? confirmed Frenchman David Lepartien, who is he just lost last week. He lost his bid to be the IOC president.
Got absolutely.
Have either of you guys seen Conclave?
Yes.
Yeah, I was imagining this level of drama. Unfortunately, they only had to do one vote though, which is sad.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the sports pope?
So Christy Coventry won by handily. A bunch of these sort of previously thought to be front runners were sort of walloped, Sebco, etc. But the relevance to cycling is that if David Lepartien had won this election, if you can call it an election, it's kind of like ish. Then then he would have had to leave his position at the UCI, which means he wouldn't be the UCI president anymore. This means we get to hang on to David Lepartien. Thank goodness.
Forever.
Well, it means he might actually do his job again. Sorry, is that a bit harsh?
He has said
He
has said that he's now going to decrease the number of jobs he has. So if he had gotten the IOC gig, that potentially temporarily would have been up to 11, and then because he didn't get that, he's just stuck at 10. Which is I've been trying to get past 10 for a while myself, and I can see how that you kind of hit a limit there, right? So he's now decided that he is going to also back away from another gig, which is the head of the French Olympic Committee. So he's going to be down to 9. He's going to have so much time.
What are the 9 jobs besides obviously what we know about?
I think only Ian knows about them.
Only Ian knows about them, and he's keeping them close to his chest.
It's like a seat like the KFC 11 herbs and spices that only the Colonel knows about. Like Ian Treloar is the only one who knows every single one of David Lepartien is even I don't even know 2 of them, but that man who drinks his little beers, he knows. But yeah, so that's going to take him back into single figures, which is crucial because in the quotes of David Lepartien announcing this, he said that the number of jobs and concurrent roles he was holding came at the cost of a very substantial personal investment, which is the sort of way you describe your work-life balance being out of whack if you are a professional suit doing 11 jobs or 10 jobs at the same time. So here's to David Lepartien getting his personal life back, I guess, and maybe finding some new hobbies.
Some of his personal life back.
Well, the other sort of relevance for cycling here, again, to sort of, I guess, turn it back to slightly more serious, is that we've heard that a lot of things like one cycling, for example, have been sort of locked up half cycling, fun cycling. They've been kind of locked up because when you don't know who the president is going to be, the UCI president is going to be, then you're not going to sort of move forward with this sort of thing. So now that is unlocked, we're expecting movement on that front, and we're expecting. I think it was Chris Marshall-Bell who described it as ruling with an iron fist is what Lepartien's going to be doing over the next 6 months, maybe out of anger of losing this.
I think the guy needs a holiday.
He's going to be firing the bat signal towards Riyadh, being like, "Come and drop off your massive bag of money in the Swiss mountains."
Allegedly. So we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe we'll get Chris back on the pod here to talk a bit more about where that leaves one cycling and what just where we kind of stand from a sport governance perspective at this point.
Well, crucially, we also have UCI president elections in Rwanda this year because they hold their summit. Well, yeah, there's no plan B, Kit. There's no plan B. It might just be David Lepartien in Kigali Airport with a bunch of other suits deciding who's going to be next UCI president. So wherever
it is,
Ian
forward.
He might.
I don't think we can just put people forward. I don't know how this process
you should be able
works.
to.
I think
they're going to elect a new one in September.
I think it'd be put forward by your national
federation
body. Yeah, so we need.
And that would be bad
cycling
for.
And
that would be bad for Aussie cycling.
Jerry Ryan behind the bid. Probably not.
No, we need to find a country that doesn't have much cycling at all in it, and then just Antarctic cycling, and Ian can be the president of Antarctic cycling. That'd be good. Anyway,
I think we should wrap it up. It's a pretty long show today. We enjoyed hanging out with everybody. We are going to head into After Dark. We got a couple things for After Dark. One, we got E3 coming up. We got more Van der Poel, Pogačar, and Van Aert. We're going to talk really briefly about that. And then
has E3 got a garish poster again?
probably. And then we also, the Discord, so the members now have their own team in our draft rankings.
Which I'm already regretting us saying yes to because they're
Are
doing
we
really
losing?
well.
Oh, they're doing really
Oh,
well?
big time, yeah.
Well, it's hive mind, and they are smarter than us in general, so not surprising in the slightest. All right, let's head into After Dark. I do have to say something. I have one of the young people that I coach. Just got him set up with a membership, and he was like, "How do I get in After Dark? You mentioned it all the time." And I realized we haven't actually explained this in a while, like kind of since we started doing After Dark. So, After Dark is the member-only section of this podcast, which means you have to get the member feed of this podcast. It's different from just sort of opening up iTunes and clicking on Spin Cycle. You have to go get the member feed. You have to put that in your podcatcher app, whatever you want to put it in your phone and your laptop. Put it in your app of choice. In Google, or Bing, whatever you want to use. Type in Escape Collective Member Podcast. The first thing that pops up is a page, escapecollective.com/member-only-podcasts. That is a page you can only see if you are signed in. Once you get there, you can subscribe to whatever feeds you want. So you could subscribe to Performance Process to make sure you get all of the members-only Performance Process podcasts from Ronan, which is all about how to make you a better, faster, more comfortable, etc. cyclist. You can also subscribe to the Everything feed, which is the one I would frankly recommend, which just gets you the member version of every single podcast that we make. That includes Spin Cycle and After Dark. And basically what it does is it gives you your own little RSS URL. You click a button and you drop that into your app. It's all very easy. It's like one button click, bing, good to go. My only recommendation is to do that on whatever device you want to listen to the podcast on. So if you listen to podcasts on your phone, do that whole process where you Google Escape Collective Member Only Podcast on your phone, because that link is that makes it just a very quick, easy button push.
This has actually been very useful for me because I think I still don't have the After Dark version showing up on my podcast feeds, which I only need if someone on Discord or email asks about something and I have zero recollection as soon as we stop recording of what it is.
Happens frequently. Yep. We are the only caveat here is it doesn't work on Spotify, and that's Spotify's fault. That's not our fault. That's Spotify trying to close their system off. We're working with them to try to figure out a good solution, but at the moment, you've got to listen on iTunes or Google. And with that, we're going to go into After Dark, which if you're on the member feed, it just keeps going. The pod just keeps going.
And we say things within the trust tree. That's the crucial bit of After Dark.
We're almost positive that we can't be sued for anything that happens at After Dark.
Because we mentioned the trust tree caveat.
Yeah, because we've said that the trust tree is in place, and so anybody...
then we countersue for them breaking the trust tree.
Exactly. All right, we'll head in After Dark. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Friday if you're on the free feed, and if you're on the members-only feed, stick around. We're headed After Dark.